The fatal mistake. Captain Raxthor of the Zarkax Marauders stood on his bridge, mandibles clicking in anticipation as he studied the small human vessel on his view-screen. The ship was barely larger than a standard shuttle, its pristine white hull marked with blue stripes and the insignia of Earth's Junior Space Academy. His compound eyes flickered with greed. Human vessels always carried valuable technology, and a school transport would be an easy target. "Sir, are you certain about this?" His first officer, Vectel, shifted nervously. "The Galactic Council's classification for humans is extreme caution. Approach at own risk." Raxthor waved a clawed appendage dismissively. "Look at it, Vectel. It's a school transport. Probably some pampered younglings on an educational tour. Easy credits, minimal risk." He leaned forward, mandibles spreading in what passed for a smile among his species. "Begin capture procedures." The massive pirate vessel, nearly 20 times the size of its target, extended its capture beams. The human ship made no attempt to evade, floating serenely in space as the energy fields wrapped around it. Raxthor's confidence grew. Clearly, they hadn't even noticed the danger. Inside the captured vessel's main cabin, 6 children sat calmly in their seats. Sarah Chen, age 13 and top of her class in tactical planning, looked at her fellow students with quiet authority. "Remember your training," she said softly. "Follow the protocols." Marcus Rodriguez, 12, already a prodigy in computer systems, nodded as his fingers danced across his standard-issue learning tablet. Beside him, twins Jessica and James Watson, both 11 and specializing in engineering, shared a knowing look. Kini Olawale, 13, the group's expert in xenobiology and linguistics, sat straight-backed and alert, while 10-year-old David Cohen, the youngest but arguably most dangerous of them all, continued solving complex equations in his notebook. None of them showed fear. They had trained for this. As the capture beams pulled their ship into the pirate's massive hold, Sarah opened a secure channel to Earth Space Control. "Academy Transport JSA 117 reporting Class 3 boarding situation. Implementing Protocol Honeypot. Request delayed response to maximize training opportunity." The response came back immediately. "Confirmed JSA 117. Response fleet standing by at your signal. Good hunting, cadets." The pirates' boarding party found exactly what they expected. 6 children in neat academy uniforms, looking appropriately scared and confused. Raxthor himself came down to inspect their prize, his massive frame towering over the young humans. "Welcome aboard, little ones," he said, the translation matrix giving his words a false sweetness. "Don't be afraid. Your parents will pay handsomely for your safe return, and as long as everyone behaves, no one needs to get hurt." Sarah stepped forward, playing her role perfectly. "Please, sir," she said, her voice trembling just enough. "We're just students. We don't want any trouble." Behind her, David had already cataloged 17 structural weaknesses in the pirate's boarding gear, while Marcus was quietly interfacing with the ship's systems through his harmless learning tablet. The twins had memorized every detail of the cargo bay's layout, and Kimi was analyzing the pirates' biological weaknesses through their protective armor. "Take them to the holding cells," Raxthor ordered. "Separate cells. We don't want them causing trouble together." He turned to leave, already calculating the ransom demands in his head. As the children were led away, David caught Sarah's eye and gave the tiniest nod. Phase 1 was complete. The pirates had taken the bait, thinking they had captured helpless children. They hadn't realized they had just invited 6 of Earth's most promising military cadets aboard their vessel. In her cell, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The pirates had made the same mistake so many others had made before. They had assumed human children were weak, helpless, and in need of protection. They were about to learn why Earth's Junior Space Academy had a higher success rate in practical exercises than most adult military units in the galaxy. The game was about to begin, and these pirates had no idea they were playing against grandmasters. not your ordinary children. Vectel, first officer of the pirate vessel, stood before the ship's main security monitor, his antennae twitching with growing unease. Something wasn't right. The human children had been in custody for 6 hours now, and they were too quiet. His species had dealt with captured younglings before. They typically spent hours crying, screaming, or begging to be released. These children were different. They sat in their cells, seemingly calm, almost methodical in their behavior. In the first cell, Sarah Chen appeared to be doing nothing more than simple breathing exercises. But if someone had been watching more carefully, they might have noticed her fingers tapping against her knee in a precise pattern, a silent communication code taught in their first year at the academy. 3 cells down, Marcus Rodriguez had positioned himself in the perfect spot to access the cell's environmental control panel, his small frame hiding his actions from the security cameras. His nervous fidgeting was actually a systematic probe of the ship's network architecture through the panel's basic interface. "Sir," a security officer called out to Vectel, "the power fluctuations in Section 7 have started again." "Run another diagnostic," Vectel ordered, his unease growing. They'd been experiencing minor system glitches ever since the children had been brought aboard. Nothing serious enough to trigger alarms, but enough to be irritating. In her cell, Jessica Watson sat cross-legged on the floor, seemingly drawing patterns in the dust. The guard assigned to watch her had already dismissed her activities as childish scribbling. He couldn't know she was mapping the ship's power distribution network based on the subtle vibrations she could feel through the deck plates, a skill honed through countless hours of engineering exercises at the academy. Her twin brother James, 2 cells away, had been permitted to keep his jacket due to the cold temperature pirates preferred. Inside its lining, undetectable to the pirates' scanners, was a network of programmable smart fibers, standard issue in all academy uniforms. With subtle movements, he was slowly reprogramming them into something far more useful than mere clothing. Kimi Olawale had spent the first hour of her captivity crying, which her guards had expected. They hadn't realized she was using those tears to test the cell's atmospheric composition, analyzing the way they evaporated to determine exact environmental settings. Now she sat quietly, occasionally making small talk with her guard in the pirate's own language, a fact that had yet to strike them as unusual. But it was David Cohen, the youngest, who was proving the most unsettling to his captors. The child hadn't moved from his spot on the cell's small bench, his eyes closed, apparently sleeping. 3 different guards had requested reassignment from his cell. None could explain exactly why, but something about the way the small human child sat there, so still, so confident, made their natural predator instincts scream in warning. On the bridge, Captain Raxthor was beginning to feel the first stirrings of doubt. "Have you sent the ransom demands?" he asked his communications officer. "Sir, there's something strange," the officer replied. "Every time we try to send the message, it gets corrupted somehow." "And Earth's response?" He paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "They don't seem concerned at all." In her cell, Sarah felt the slight vibration of Marcus's coded message through the deck. "Systems immediate. Ready." She allowed herself a small smile. Standard Academy protocols suggested waiting 12 hours before beginning a counter-operation, giving rescue forces time to position themselves. But these weren't standard conditions. This was a practical exam scenario, and they were being graded on initiative. She tapped back a simple response. "XAZQT Phase 2. In his cell, David Cohen finally opened his eyes. The guard assigned to watch him felt a cold shiver run down his exoskeleton as the small human child smiled, not the frightened smile of a captive, but the confident grin of a predator. Throughout the massive pirate vessel, systems began to fail in subtle, coordinated ways. Gravity fluctuated by 0.01%, not enough to notice, unless you were looking for it. Environmental controls shifted by 1/4 of a degree. Security cameras experienced microsecond delays in their feeds. None of these changes were enough to trigger alarms, but they were enough to start a cascade of events that the children had calculated down to the millisecond. In the security center, Vechtel's antennae were now twitching constantly. Something was very, very wrong. He pulled up the children's intake scans, looking for anything they might have missed. The scans showed exactly what they'd expected. 6 human children, no weapons, no technology beyond basic school equipment. But as he stared at the scans, a forgotten briefing from his military days surfaced in his memory. Something about human educational institutions, about their advanced programs, and specialized academies. His blood ran cold as he finally noticed the insignia on their uniforms, not just any school transport, but Earth's Junior Space Academy. The same academy that had, just last year, repelled a Kraken battle fleet using nothing but training vessels and classroom equipment. "Captain," he called, his voice urgent. "We need to talk. Now." But it was already too late. Phase 2 had begun. Tables turned. The first sign that something was catastrophically wrong came when the pirate ship's artificial gravity reversed itself in 3 specific corridors. For exactly 2.7 seconds, anyone in those passages found themselves suddenly falling up before the gravity restored itself. The incident was minor, affecting only maintenance routes, but it caused exactly the response the children had anticipated. Security teams to affected sections. Raxthor ordered, dispatching 3 squads to investigate the gravity malfunction. He didn't notice that this exact action reduced security coverage in key areas of the ship by precisely 47%. In her cell, Sarah Chen closed her eyes and began counting down. 5, 4, 3. The ship's lighting systems flickered, plunging the holding cells into darkness for exactly 1.5 seconds. When the lights returned, David Cohen's cell was empty. The guard assigned to watch him stood frozen, his compound eyes fixed on the empty bench where the small human had been sitting moments before. The cell door was still locked. The walls were intact. There was no sign of how the child had vanished. As the guard reached for his communicator with trembling claws, the ventilation system began pumping a subtle mixture of gases into the security section, courtesy of Kimmy's xenobiological expertise and the environmental controls Marcus had compromised. Nothing toxic or harmful. The children had been very clear in their briefing about non-lethal approaches, but the specific mixture made the pirates' natural anxiety responses heightened dramatically. Within minutes, the security staff began seeing shadows move in their peripheral vision, jumping at small sounds, their natural predatory confidence eroding with each passing moment. In the engineering section, the twins' plan came to fruition. Jessica's mapped power grid provided the perfect template for James's reprogrammed uniform fibers. Released through the environmental system, the microscopic smart threads began integrating themselves into the ship's electrical network. Each fiber was insignificant on its own, but there were thousands of them, working in concert, gradually transforming the pirate's own power grid into something new. Vechtel burst onto the bridge, his antennae now practically vibrating with stress. "Captain, I've confirmed it. These aren't ordinary students. The Junior Space Academy. It's a military training ground. Their practical exercises are legendary. Last year, a class of 12-year-olds disabled a Drachnid warship using nothing but reprogrammed cleaning robots." Raxthor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe agitation. "They're children," he insisted, but his voice wavered. "How dangerous can they possibly be?" As if in answer, every screen on the bridge suddenly displayed the same image. A smiling David Cohen, waving at the cameras. The image was being broadcast from the ship's main engine room, which should have been impossible. The engine room was the most secure location on the vessel, protected by multiple layers of security. "Hello," David's voice came through the ship's communication system, sounding impossibly cheerful. "I hope you don't mind, but I've made some adjustments to your antimatter containment protocols. They were really quite inefficient. Oh, and I borrowed a few tools. Hope that's okay." Before Raxthor could respond, Marcus Rodriguez's voice joined in. Your computer security is interesting, by the way. Very retro. I've taken the liberty of updating it. You now have approximately 3 minutes before all your systems transfer to our control. Well, the ones we don't already control, that is. The captain stared at his command console in horror as systems began locking down one by one. How? They're in separate cells. They can't be coordinating this. Sarah Chen's calm voice echoed through the bridge. Actually, we've been coordinating since the moment you brought us aboard. The Academy's hive mind protocol is quite effective, though most species never notice it. Did you really think we were just sitting quietly in our cells? Throughout the ship, the smart fibers the twins had released began their final configuration. Every piece of technology, from the smallest sensor to the main engines, was now part of a vast network under the children's control. Kimi's carefully designed atmospheric adjustments had reduced the entire pirate crew to a nervous, jumpy state, while David's adjustments to the engine room meant the ship's power systems would only respond to their commands. Captain, Vectel said, his voice shaking, we're receiving a transmission. It's from Earth. The main screen lit up, showing a stern-faced human woman in a military uniform. This is Admiral Chen of Earth Space Command. I see our cadets have completed their practical exam ahead of schedule. Well done, children. Raxthor of the Zarkax Marauders. Your vessel is now under our control. I suggest you order your crew to stand down. Raxthor's legs nearly gave out as the implications hit him. Practical exam. You mean, this was all a test? Of course, Sarah's voice replied cheerfully. The Academy believes in hands-on experience. Thank you for providing such an excellent training opportunity. Your ship's weaknesses will make an interesting case study for next semester's classes. As security teams reported complete loss of control throughout the vessel, Raxthor finally understood the true magnitude of his error. He hadn't captured helpless children. He had unknowingly volunteered his ship and crew as training exercises for some of the most dangerous students in the galaxy. In the engine room, David looked up from his adjustments and smiled at the nearest camera. Oh, and Captain, you might want to have someone check the secondary plasma manifold. I noticed some concerning wear patterns. Wouldn't want anything to explode accidentally. The pirates' most feared raiding vessel, Terror of Three Sectors, had just been completely neutralized by 6 children using nothing but their school supplies and standard-issue uniforms. And somewhere in the holding cells, Sarah Chen was calmly updating their mission report, making notes for future classes on the most efficient ways to capture a pirate vessel while minimizing property damage. After all, they were being graded on professionalism. The hunter becomes the hunted. Captain Raxthor stood in his own brig, mandibles twitching nervously as he watched the 6 children who had completely dismantled his operation. They were casually lounging in what had been his private command center, reviewing data on his personal terminals while eating their packed lunches. Your encryption was really basic, Marcus commented between bites of his sandwich. I've seen better security on playground equipment back home. No offense. None taken, Raxthor replied automatically, still struggling to process how thoroughly he'd been outmaneuvered by a group of students who hadn't even reached puberty by their species standards. Sarah Chen was speaking with Admiral Chen, her mother, as it turned out, on the main screen. Yes, Admiral. We've documented all their tactical weaknesses and security vulnerabilities. The Academy's next semester will find this case study particularly illuminating. Excellent work, Cadet Chen, the Admiral replied. The response fleet will arrive in 20 minutes, though I see you hardly need the backup. In the engine room, David had assembled a small crowd of the pirates' engineering staff, who were watching in amazement as he explained the improvements he'd made to their antimatter containment systems. See, if you adjust the quantum harmonics like this, he demonstrated on a holographic display, you get a 12% increase in efficiency. Your way wasn't wrong exactly. Just primitive. The pirate's chief engineer, a veteran of 30 years, was taking notes. Kimi had set up an impromptu xenobiology lab in the medical bay, analyzing the effects of her atmospheric modifications. The compound I synthesized from your own medical supplies triggered your species' natural fear responses, she explained to the ship's doctor. Nothing harmful, but it did make you much more susceptible to suggestion. That's why your security teams kept seeing shadows moving in empty corridors. The twins, Jessica and James, had turned the ship's power grid into a marvel of engineering that species far more advanced than the pirates had yet to achieve. The smart fibers in our uniforms are really just basic academy equipment, Jessica explained to a group of astonished technicians. We usually use them for small repairs during spacewalks, though reconfiguring them to take over your entire power distribution network was a fun challenge, James added. We'll definitely include that in our project presentation next week. Vectel, standing next to his captain in the brig, finally found his voice. Why? Why are you explaining everything to us? Educational outreach is part of our mission, Sarah replied, not looking up from her report. The Academy believes in spreading knowledge, even to those who initially present themselves as hostile. It helps prevent future misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. Raxthor's voice cracked. We tried to kidnap you. Yes, and that was a tactically unsound decision, Sarah noted. But it provided an excellent opportunity to demonstrate why the Galactic Council classifies humans as an extreme caution species. Even our children are more dangerous than most adult warriors. Through the viewport, they could see the Earth response fleet arriving. 5 massive warships that made the pirates' vessel look tiny in comparison. But they hadn't fired a single shot. They hadn't needed to. I don't understand, Raxthor admitted. If you're this advanced, why let yourselves be captured at all? Why not just destroy us? David wandered back onto the bridge, munching on an apple. Because that wouldn't have been nearly as educational, he said cheerfully. Besides, your ship had some interesting technical challenges. How else would we practice problem-solving in real-world conditions? The Academy's practical exams are very thorough, Sarah explained. We're graded not just on success, but on methodology, efficiency, and our ability to handle unexpected situations. Though I have to admit, your security was a bit below standard for our usual exercises. Marcus looked up from his terminal. I finished analyzing their computer systems, Sarah. Want me to show them how I bypassed their unbreakable encryption in under 3 minutes? It might help them improve their security for next time. Next time. Vectal's antennae drooped. There won't be a next time. After this, no pirate in the galaxy will dare come near a human ship again. That's rather the point. Admiral Chen's voice came from the main screen. Consider this a lesson in galactic civics. Humans believe in teaching by example. As the response fleet shuttles began docking procedures, Raxthor watched the children efficiently preparing for departure. They were gathering their notes, discussing improvements for future exercises, and generally behaving as if the complete takeover of a pirate vessel was nothing more than a particularly interesting school day. One last question, he called out as Sarah prepared to leave. How did you coordinate all this while in separate cells? Sarah smiled. That's classified information, Captain. But here's a hint. Humans are never as isolated as you think we are. It's one of our species' many interesting traits. The children gathered their belongings, leaving behind a completely neutralized pirate crew, vastly improved ship systems, and a profound lesson about underestimating humanity, even its youngest members. As they boarded their transport back to their original vessel, David turned back to wave at the security cameras one last time. Thanks for the practical exercise. Oh, and you might want to check the secondary systems in about an hour. I left a few surprises for your engineers to puzzle over. Consider it homework. Lessons learned. 1 month after the incident, the Galactic Council's Committee on Interspecies Relations convened an emergency session. The chamber was packed with representatives from every spacefaring race, all gathered to discuss what had become known as the Academy Incident. High Counselor Zexnav, his crystalline form shimming with concern, addressed the assembly. The report before us today requires immediate attention. The incident involving Earth's junior Space Academy students has sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld and forced us to reassess our understanding of human capabilities. Holoprojections displayed the statistics. One veteran pirate vessel, completely neutralized by 6 human children. Ship systems not just disabled but improved. A crew of hardened criminals reduced to taking notes from a 10-year-old about proper antimatter containment protocols. Since the incident, a security analyst reported, attacks on human vessels have dropped to 0. No pirates, raiders, or marauders will go near them. In fact, 3 major criminal organizations have officially added must avoid all human ships, especially small ones, to their operational protocols. In the observation gallery, Admiral Chen sat with her daughter Sarah and the other 5 students who had been invited to observe the proceedings. David was already bored, sketching designs for improvements to the council chamber's outdated ventilation system. Furthermore, the analyst continued, we've received 17 applications from various species requesting permission to send their own children to Earth's educational institutions. It seems the demonstration of human teaching methods has attracted considerable interest. Marcus raised his hand. Admiral, their cybersecurity is really basic. Should I offer to help them upgrade it? Not now, Marcus, the Admiral whispered. Let them finish their discussion first. A Drachnid representative rose to speak, his warrior-cased markings indicating high rank. My species once believed we understood combat, he rumbled. Then we discovered that human children treat military encounters as educational opportunities. They don't just defeat you. They grade your performance and offer constructive criticism. The twins tried not to giggle. They had already submitted their detailed analysis of the pirate ship's power systems to their engineering professor, earning extra credit for creative problem-solving in field conditions. The implications are clear, High Counselor Zexnav concluded. We must update our species classification for humans. Not only are they more advanced than previously believed, but their method of preparing their young for space travel is unlike anything we've encountered. Kimi was taking careful notes. This would make an excellent addition to her xenosociology thesis on interspecies misconceptions. The Council's final resolution was unanimous. Human space would be marked as approach with extreme caution. Educational institutions particularly dangerous. A note was added to all galactic databases. Human children should not be assumed harmless. Academic vessels may be more dangerous than military ones. As they left the council chamber, Sarah reviewed the mission's final outcomes on her tablet. Full marks for tactical execution, extra credit for improving hostile vessel systems, and a special commendation for advancing interspecies understanding. Not bad for a first-year practical exam. I still think we could have done better, David mused. Their engine efficiency could have been improved by at least another 3%. Admiral Chen smiled at her daughter and the other students. The point wasn't to achieve perfection, cadets. It was to teach a lesson. And I'd say that lesson has been very thoroughly learned. Back on Earth, the Academy's board of directors was already incorporating the incident into next semester's curriculum. Future students would study how 6 of their peers had turned a hostage situation into an impromptu teaching opportunity, complete with practical demonstrations and hands-on learning experiences. In the years that followed, the story would be told throughout the galaxy, not as a warning, but as an explanation. Humans were different. Even their children approached space travel with a combination of curiosity, capability, and an unsettling willingness to treat any situation as a learning experience. Pirates learned to check vessel registries very, very carefully. The sight of Earth's academic insignia became more terrifying than any military marking. After all, warships might just destroy you, but school ships would take notes on your tactics, grade your performance, and possibly improve your systems while explaining exactly how they defeated you. And in the Academy's halls, a new plaque was mounted, bearing the words that would inspire future generations of students. Every encounter is an opportunity to learn. Every challenge is a chance to teach. Even pirates can benefit from a proper education. Below it, in smaller text, additional credit available for improving hostile vessels while capturing them. Please document all upgrades for peer review.